through hard times, do you give up or do you push through? Now, when I talk about perseverance, and that's what we're going to be talking about today, when it comes to marriage, there's a lot of times where you have to persevere. You have to persevere when you and your spouse go through trials together. And then there's other times where the mistakes of your spouse can cause some tension within your marriage, to the point where you have to answer this question: when your marriage goes through hard times, do you give up or do you push through? So we're going to be looking at when marriages go through hard times. And Dave and Jane are going to share with us how to persevere together when outside circumstances cause tension or cause one of you or both of you to go through trials. Before I turn it over and we start having a conversation, I want to read for us James 1, 2 through 4. And James tells us this: "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." Now, I've never met anybody that has had joy when they've gone through trials. Okay, I've never had a conversation where it's like, "Oh, I'm so glad God is putting me through this mess." All right, it's just amazing. Okay, I know I've never had joy when I've gone through trials. However, I've had joy when I've gotten through the trials. But it's just very uncommon for us to find joy when we go through hard times. But God still challenges us to do that. And even though James is talking about an individual's faith, when an individual goes through trials and they're married, it affects the other one. Okay? When a spouse sins, it affects the other. When a spouse is going through hard times, it affects the other. Because when you are married, you take two individuals and you become one flesh. And so your spouse's faith is going to impact your faith. Your spouse's joy is going to impact your joy. And the trials and the mistakes that you make are going to impact your marriage. And so in this life, to live godly lives and to guard and protect a godly marriage, sometimes it takes perseverance. Okay, and so I'm going to have a conversation with Dave and Jane. You all are just going to be privy to the conversation. But Dave, Jane, I know I didn't send this question to you, but how long have you guys been married?
Almost 33 years.
Almost 33 years. When is the April 11th? That is coming up. Wow, get it. Okay, so would you both agree then that marriages go through hard times?
All the time.
All the time. Okay, make sure that the microphone up there.
Nick, you want to turn your mic on?
All the time.
Is my mic off?
No. Yeah, it's off.
Check.
There you go.
Alright. There we go. So I was sorry. Sorry, Mom. Alright, so now, so you both agree that marriages go through hard times. He said yes, you laughed. Which I think anybody in here who's married, or even just in life, we all know. Yeah, life's tough. So I've heard a funny story, and I've heard it multiple times, and I just think it's hysterical. So like early on in your guys' marriage, there was this moment where you guys got into a fight. Okay? And in the middle of that fight, or disagreement or argument, somebody decided to go to sleep. And that did not sit well with the other. And so the other woke them up to continue the argument. So if you can share with us that story on what happened, how it started, and who it was who fell asleep.
Oh, it's me who fell asleep. I don't even remember how it started. But one thing you got to realize is, before we were married, we never fought. Matter of fact, it was on our honeymoon when we got to the Gateway Arch, and I wanted to go up in the Gateway Arch, and she saw how small the cars were, and she didn't want to, so I gave the tickets to somebody as we were leaving, and I said she chickened out. That was our first fight.
I'm not going to lie, it's 33 years later and I'm still salty. and furthermore, that's
You said you, oh, sorry, go ahead.
And that's not the only time that happened. There was another time that we were fighting that she walked off into the other room. And then I fell asleep and she came running back. Aren't you going to come and get me? So I can fall asleep real easily.
You are not much of a You are the least boring Johnson I know. So you mentioned that you were very salty about the whole cart thing. That reminded me of a story with my parents. So my mom loved Happy Days. Okay, she loved it, and it was the series finale, and she wanted to watch it, but my dad wanted to watch Alien B or whatever back in the B. There you go. And my dad told my mom, it'll be on again. We'll just watch this. 25 years. Okay, it took 25 years for my mother to finally see the series finale. And we had to hear about it all the time from my mom. Hey, remember how you wanted to watch B and I couldn't see the Happy Days finale? She saw a reunion episode before she saw the series finale. Okay, and even though she saw the series finale, she was still salty about it. Alright, she was like, it still took 25 years for me to see it. And so I read that passage in James about how we need to consider pure joy when we go through trials. And I like how he says when, not if, because we're all going to go through trials, and even our marriages are going to go through trials. However, I lost my space. There we go. All right. So arguments are going to happen in a marriage. There are some who would even say that it is healthy to argue with your spouse. However, the important thing is reconciliation. So when you have had disagreements, whether big or small, it creates tension between you two. So how are you two reconciled after those moments?
Jane's always right. We both have big egos, and sometimes we will fight about the stupidest things, and neither one of us wants to admit we're wrong. But the one thing that I've come to realize is God has made me different than me. And there's times I just need to listen to what she's saying. A perfect example of that was, and I'm still a workaholic, but I would come home from work when the kids were little, and I just want to pop them. And she told me, hey, the kids are little for just so long. You need to spend time with them when you come here. And it's her wisdom and seeing things that I know that have helped to reconcile a lot of those differences.
I think I like 60 different things, but you're right, it's not easy when you have ABD and you're up front for people. The first thing is, before we were married, my mother sat us down and she said, we in this family do not believe in divorce. We believe in murder and we're wholeheartedly for it. But we do not believe in divorce. And so we had there is no divorce mindset. And so sometimes, and we look at it personally in our lives, that our marriages are a big part of our testimony in who we are as Christians. But lots of times, I mean, there's going to be arguments. Sometimes you're living with the love of your life and your favorite lover on the planet, and nothing is as great as that person. And sometimes you're living with your brother. And you have to remember how that feels and that you have to power through. Lots of times, how we get through things is, and we do, I think it honors God, but lots of times we get through things. It'll be a fight, and it usually ends up with me laughing. And one of our favorite stories in our family anger and all the self-hatred just came out for 4 hours. And finally he looked at me and he said, you know, I'm beginning to get a little cross. And at that moment, I laughed so loud and so hard that you marry somebody that sweet that can take 4 hours of ugliness and then say, I'm beginning to get a little cross now. And the kids will say that to me all the time. I think Dad looks like he's starting to get a little cross. And then I know, okay, pull back, and that's when we start laughing.
You gotta love it when the kids bring up all of your mistakes and all of the memories.
It's nice when they have a front row.
So you did touch on one of your miscarriages, but as individuals, kind of like I said, we all go through trials, and I think one of the biggest trials that you guys went through was when you guys were trying to have kids to your family, and it just wasn't happening. And I've known people who have gone through miscarriages before, and I've always seen two different responses. They've either persevered and stayed together, or they resented one another and then just left the marriage altogether. And Dave, you share it, you're always willing to share the story, and you get a little teary-eyed when you share it for communion, and then your kids make fun of you for crying. So you go through all this miscarriages, and then God blesses you with Lydia. And then after you adopted Lydia, God blesses you with 2 more beautiful children, and then you got grandkids, you have son-in-laws. And so can you share with us how that trial impacted your relationship with each other, and then how you guys persevered through that?
There's a couple answers to that. One of them was the fact that we did go through a lot of pain, and it was a struggle for both of us. But then we both also saw God's grace and how God worked with Lydia. We looked at different avenues of adoption, and we decided, well, we're going to get somebody to do our home study, and found somebody on Friday, and on Sunday we had found out about, through some church relationships, that there was a young girl in Iowa City that had given the preacher down there 3 days to find somebody, or she was going to abort the baby. And we had already made the decision we were going to adopt, and it was like God just kept placing things right in line for us. And so we had to wait the whole 9 months. But then after that 9 months, God was faithful, and we had Lydia. And then after we had Lydia, my dad was also going through pancreatic cancer. And so every time we brought Lydia down, he would say, this is the best gift that you could give me. So not only was it a blessing to us, but to my dad.
I think the hardest, one of the hardest things is learning that we go through things differently. When we lost Victoria, it was, Dave didn't know he was losing that. So kind of his pain and the way he dealt with it, it was not the worst thing that had ever happened to him in the world. And he had seen his best friend die when he was a teenager. So to him, this was something that was sad, and we could have more children and we move on. Whereas I wanted to be a mother since I was 3, and I knew that's why I was put on this earth, was to be a mom. And I just was so devastated, and he was moving on with his life. And that caused a lot of conflict, because you do handle things differently. And it was really tricky. And I remember probably a month after we lost her that I was writing my prayer journal, and I'm like, oh God, still mad at you. I still can't get a sentence out to you. I'm thankful for the strength to mourn. And that's all I could say. And 2 days later, I wrote down, I'm thankful for the strength to mourn, and I might be open to adoption. And 1 year and 1 day later, I was looking at my prayer journal that said I might be open to adoption. And on that particular day, I had a little girl in my accident, a little bed that was all mine that he gave me. God is faithful, but you have to be faithful too. And I just, yeah, it's a lot that you go through it differently. Then when we lost Thomas, and we already had 3 children, and again, I was in the 2nd trimester, and Dave knew then what he lost. He lost first giggles and early morning feedings, and somebody comes home, when you come home, that shows you, look, I'm wearing shorts today, and I'm all ready to go outside, and I'm going to play on the swing set, and I had juice today and fish chips, and now let's go. And he knew what he had lost, and at the time that we were losing, we were in the hospital, and I just delivered him. My husband, who had been sleeping by the bed, fell to his knees. And because we had kids, I wanted to be an expert in crying in the shower. And otherwise, every time I cry, Joelle cries. So I learned not to do that. And Dave just got more into his work. And so we kind of mourned separately then.
And so how did you guys come back to that?
And making sure we're faithful to God.
And dealing with the commonalities.
Yeah. We're still parenting with 3, we still are a team, and that's how I always look at parenting. There's still a team.
And you're not only parenting the 3 that you got, but like, I mean, if you caught it early, I called you mom, and I call you mom all the time, and you're just a mom to so many of us. Whether it's here, whether it's out. You know, when I was at Joelle's wedding, I don't think, maybe a handful called you Jane, the rest called you mom. Mama Jane. And so I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I feel like the experiences that you guys went through, you just kind of became parent figures for so many, and an inspiration to so many. You know, when I was thinking of the sermon, and I was trying to think, who do I want to bring up? Who do I want to share this? You guys always came to my mind because, you know, you've always cared so much for people. You've always loved on people. And you both have wisdom. You know, you laugh and say ADD being up here is very distracting. Yes, it is, very much so. But it's the characteristics that you both have that balance each other out and just help each other grow. And so my final question, and it's kind of the question that I asked at the beginning, but I want you to share your wisdom to the young families here, and even those who have been married for long, and even those who are going to be watching in their home. When your marriage goes through trials, do you give up or do you push through it? And then answer why. So do you give up or do you push through those hard times in your life?
You have to push through, but it seems like every time that we push through, God is blessed. You know, whether it be through problems having kids, whether it be problems with finances, whether it be problems with kids sneaking out in the middle of the night, whether it be whatever, as we've endured those things together, there's been a reward at the end of it. And the other thing is we've learned to embrace each other's differences, because that's what makes us whole.
I think he's got my history, like nobody else on the planet has all of my history. There's still stuff that, like just recently I was talking to Joelle and she goes, "What? You never told me that story." And I'm like, "Really, surely I've said this," and I haven't, but I told him. And so, again, I feel they're the ones who do everything, and they make it look like they've done it all so well. And you've got the Johnsons, you've got two people that have screwed up so many times. You really do. We've been through so very much. We've been through infant loss. We've been through a rebellious child. We've been through bankruptcy, near infidelity. I just think the fact that if you marry somebody who's a Christian, hold them accountable to that Christian walk. There was one time that we all probably don't know, Dave left for 2 whole weeks. He left us, and he was going to leave me for someone else. And we've known people who have had spouses leave. I know lots of women who are much better spouses for other men. I know men who have had their female spouse, their wife, leave them for other women. And I knew what the end result looked like. And I know one of them actually even passed out because she hadn't eaten in so long. And her husband literally just walked out the door anyway. I've heard horror stories. And I called him in the middle of the night. I was just hysterical, like I couldn't breathe. And I hadn't slept in days. And he came home and he picked me up, put me on his lap. And he said, I will never do anything to hurt another soul that hurt you. And that's because Jesus is real and isn't. And that's the thing I get to tell people all the time. What makes him different is Christianity isn't fake. It's not just actually there. It's real. I married a man who loves Jesus and wants to be just like him. How can you not love him?
Yeah, marriage is tough. You go through many trials, and one of the things that we're going to be talking about is when your spouse makes a mistake, when they sin, and we're going to touch on the story of Hosea and Gomer here, where, there is very much evidence of a promiscuous woman and adultery taking place, but what we're going to see through it is the love that God has not only towards people, but I think the love that we need to have in our marriages. And you touched on it well, I've seen on Facebook so many times people posting things and saying, if a man leaves you for another woman, don't have a back. Same thing for a woman, and I think it's different because we're not making mistakes, we're going to be stupid, we're going to be selfish. But if Jesus is truly real, like you said, Jesus is real. It's like it's not something that puts on Sunday. Jesus got to him. Jesus got to you, and that reconciled that marriage. And I think it takes, kind of like what I said in my very first sermon, marriage takes 3. And it takes God being the center, God being involved in both lives, and pushing those 2 individuals to persevere and overcome. And if only one is listening, then it's just, And so I think you touched on it well. I think Jesus and I think God is how we persevere, is how we overcome. And so I thank you guys for coming up here and sharing. So speaking of perseverance, I do want to read this verse for you. In Ecclesiastes 4, 9 through 12, it says, 2 are better than 1 because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him who is alone when he falls, and has not another to lift him up. Again, if 2 lie together, they keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, 2 will withstand him. A threefold cord is not quickly broken. Kind of like what I said earlier, in marriages, when one falls, you usually have the other one to pick each other up. I'm reminded of the Three Musketeers quote, one for all for one. And that's really marriage right there. You are there for each other. You were there to pick each other up, to encourage each other. And that's what God designed marriage for, was for two people to come together to help each other in this walk of faith and to help each other become the man and woman that God designed them to be, and then to also raise kids up in the kingdom. And so as we talked about trials and what this sermon is going to do, I just want to kind of put a caveat out there. I realize we did not have junior church today. Some of the stuff in my script was not kid-friendly, so I'm going to try to cover up certain words that we're going to be using, especially when we talk about Hosea and Gomer. If I do end up saying, a word and I don't catch it, have fun explaining it to them for sure. But kind of the same with trials. Also, this sermon is very easy for if you are not married. You can change all the words that say marriage and put you or your in there, and it would fit. Okay, because the story of what James tells us with trials and temptations, you don't have to be married to go through trials. You don't have to be married to have your faith tested. Every single one of us is tested every single day. And God is going to allow us to go through trials of many kinds, but we need to learn to overcome. And the reason that God puts us through trials is because God is going to use these trials to strengthen us, and He's going to use it to strengthen our marriages. All right? We are told in James that we go through trials so that we can grow in perseverance, so that we can grow in our relationship with God. And trials will come and trials will go, and we have to decide early on, am I going to persevere? Am I going to overcome these trials, or am I just going to quit? Now, one of the things when I was writing this sermon, I was a little nervous because there's so many who have been divorced here in this church and here in this world. And when I talk about infidelity and adultery and being forgiven and forgiving those who have done this sin against you, it's very difficult because maybe the spouse just didn't care about your forgiveness. Maybe the individual just stopped caring and left. How do we overcome that? And kind of what I said in my very first sermon, use these sermons, use this series as a training for when you do marry someone. Use this as if you are divorced, use this for when you get married again, if that is what you choose. All right, and if you are divorced, you have a story to share. And Jane mentioned up here, for wisdom, YWS, the Hammers, the Hansons, the Thomases, they all went through mistakes. Okay? Am I right in saying that? All right? Every marriage has gone through hardships. Every marriage has gone through times where they had to persevere. And so, you who are well seasoned in marriage, there are countless others who are going through issues that we don't know about. All right? Maybe you yourself are going through trials and need to persevere. There's so many people around that can help with that and to help each other out. But trials in marriage are not the only thing that we have to persevere through. Sometimes as humans we will make mistakes and we will mess up, and we are selfish individuals who want to do what we want to do, and when we do that, it makes marriage difficult. You see, I think when I ask the question, when your marriage goes through hard times, do you give up or do you push through? We can say that when it's a trial, we will push through, but when someone makes a mistake that I just can't forgive, I think it's time that we just do away with it. I think it's just time that I leave, that I don't do this. That, can we answer with push through it if the other one made a mistake or maybe broke the vows that they made on your wedding day? You see, the question is there room for forgiveness? And so, men, let me know, and if you don't let me know, your wife will let me know by all the elbowing that they're going to do to you. Has your wife ever asked you to go to the store and pick up one item, and then you've gone to that store and you got distracted by the peanut aisle, you got distracted by the drinks aisle, you got distracted by the ice cream aisle, you got distracted by this aisle, and you end up coming home with more than what you went out, but yet you forgot that one item. Okay? You forgot that one item that you were told to go out. What happened? We got distracted. Alright? You walk in the store and instead of getting what your wife asked you to get, you're like, you know what, I'm going to get what I want today. Okay? So I'm going to get my macadamia nuts. I'm going to get a fruit roll up. I'm going to get my string cheese. Ooh, I want some steak tonight. I want to get a steak. And then you forget that you didn't buy a steak for your spouse, but you bought a steak for yourself. And then you go home and she's like, where's the item that I told you to get? Oh, sorry, honey. Okay, I forgot. I got distracted. And I think that's what happens, or that's the reason why we make mistakes. It's because we get distracted. It's because we allow our own selfish desires to distract us from what really matters. In our story today with Hosea, we're going to read about how God used Hosea to be his prophet. But God used Hosea differently than all other prophets. You see, a prophet, he was just a messenger of God. He relayed the voice of God to the people. And back in this time, the nation of Israel, it was very selfish. Okay, they were very much all about themselves, all about their pride, all about what is good for them. They would forget all the blessings that God has done for them. When He led them out of Egypt, they forget about it. When He saved them from captivity, they forget about it. And so with Hosea, God's had it with Israel. But instead of sending someone to tell them that He's upset with them, He has Hosea actually live out and show people what God goes through. Okay? He has Hosea live out the heartache. He allows Hosea to live out knowing that his bride, his wife that he chooses, is not going to remain faithful. And he does it to show how our relationship with Him is. Because we can make fun of Israel all day long, but how many of us get distracted in life? How many of us choose something else rather than God? You see, what we're going to learn from Hosea is God's love and His care and His wrath towards us as His bride, as His children. But this story can fit very well into our marriages. Because every single one of us is going to make mistakes. And those mistakes not only impact us, but it's going to impact our spouse. So if you are in Hosea, we're going to start in chapter 1, beginning in verse 2. When the Lord began to speak through Hosea, the Lord said to him, "Go, marry a promiscuous woman and have children with her, for like an adulterous wife, this land is guilty of unfaithfulness to the Lord." So he married Gomer, daughter of Diblaim, and she conceived and bore him a son. Then the Lord said to Hosea, "Call him Jezreel, because I will soon punish the house of Jehu for the massacre at Jezreel, and I will put an end to the kingdom of Israel. In that day I will break Israel's bow in the valley of Jezreel." Gomer conceived again and gave birth to a daughter. Then the Lord said to Hosea, "Call her Lo-Ruhamah, which means not loved. For I will no longer show love to Israel, that I should at all forgive them. Yet I will show love to Judah, and I will save them, not by bow, sword, or battle, or by horses or horsemen, but I, the Lord their God, will save them." After she had weaned Lo-Ruhamah, Gomer had another son. Then the Lord said, "Call him Lo-Ammi, which means not my people, for you are not my people, and I am not your God." So what the story shows us is that God is calling Hosea to challenge our lives, but also to challenge our marriages. We begin with God telling Hosea to marry a promiscuous woman. Okay, so like when Hosea was called by God, I don't think he was expecting to be called to marry a lady of the night. Alright, it's kind of like, hey, I need you to go marry this adulterer. What? Okay, I need you to marry this promiscuous woman. What? Wait, say what? Okay, many of us, if God asked us to do that, we would be like, God, wrong, okay, wrong number, God, okay, or we go, oop, disconnected, sorry, went through a tunnel. But what does Hosea do? Because Hosea was a follower of God, he submitted to what God called him to, and so Hosea went and found Gomer and married her. And how my mind works, I kind of wonder how that whole process went. Okay, like how that whole dating thing, did they go on dates? Did they meet for coffee and talk about each other's lives and what they want in a relationship? Or did he just go to the street that she was on and say, hey, God told me to marry you? I just kind of wonder how that process went. However it went, they got married, and they ended up having 3 kids. She gives birth to 3 kids. And the names that God gives them is God sharing his frustration, his heartache, and his wrath against the nation of Israel. Because you saw that all those names had a specific meaning to it. And they were not the nicest responses. They were not the nicest names for kids. I've heard students who have hated the name that their parents gave them. All right? How would you like to be given the name of not loved? Okay? Like, I don't think, talk about, self-identity issues. Like, that would create one right there. But, so they get married. They have 1 child together. And then how the text reads and how the original language reads for that second child, it is a safe indication that kid number 2 was not Hosea's kid. Alright? When you look at the original language, it is safe that we can assume that number 2 was not his, and number 3 is still on the fence there. So even though they were married, even though Gomer and Hosea made that commitment with each other, Hosea was still not faithful to Hosea. And what we're going to read later on in the story, especially in chapter 3, is that Gomer leaves her husband. And in Hosea chapter 3, verse 1, the Lord said to me, go show your love to your wife again, though she is loved by another man and is an adulteress. You see, Gomer couldn't leave her past life. Gomer couldn't leave what she grew up with, what she knew, what she did. And so what did she do? She went back to that lifestyle. She allowed her selfishness, her wants, the pay that she would get to leave her husband. And so Hosea is a single father of 3, knowing that his bride is living a promiscuous life and committing adultery every single night. And he knows this is going on. And the heartache that he is going through, the betrayal that he is feeling, the frustration that is going on in his mind. Still while having to love on these 3 kids, 2 who might not even be his. But Hosea is showing us how God is with us. Because we're selfish individuals and we will seek things that gratify ourselves. So as Hosea is aching and feeling that betrayal, God is feeling that betrayal as well. And the sad reality is, I think some of us have felt that betrayal as well. Maybe you're Hosea in this story. Maybe your parents are Hosea in that story. Maybe you have a close friend where when you read this story of Hosea and Gomer, you're just like, that's my friendship right there. Those are my close friends that are going through it. So maybe you're Hosea in the story, but also the sad reality is there's a possibility that some of us might be Gomer in this story. Where we've chosen our own selfishness on account rather than choosing what is good for our spouse. You see, Gomer abandoned her vows to seek selfishness, to seek what she wanted. And when we read the story, we just think to ourselves, oh, that's it. That's the end of the story. Hosea married a promiscuous woman and she left him. Oh, that's it. But that's not the end of the story. Because what we just read in verse 1 of chapter 3, God tells Hosea, go get your wife. Go get her. And so we read in the remainder of chapter 3, starting again in verse 2. So I brought her, so God tells Hosea to go, and Hosea goes, and this is where we read in verse 2. So I bought her for 15 shekels of silver and about a homer and a lamech of barley. Then I told her, you are to live with me many days. You must not be a prostitute or be intimate with any man, and I will behave the same way toward you. For the Israelites will live many days without king or prince, without sacrifice or sacred stones, without ephod and household gods. Afterward the Israelites will return and seek the Lord their God and David their king. They will come trembling to the Lord and to his blessings in the last days. So as Hosea is home with the 3 kids, 2 possibly not being his, he gets a call from God saying, Hosea, go get your wife. Now let me try to paint this picture for you of this journey that Hosea had to go on. Picture Hosea having to call a neighbor down the street saying, hey, I need you to watch my 3 kids. I go take care of something. So the babysitter comes and Hosea leaves, and Hosea is traveling probably to a part of town that a well-respected gentleman would not be. You know, he walks by individuals who are trying to sell him things, or trying to get him to buy them for a fun night. But Hosea just walks right past. Hosea goes to the street corner where he first saw Gomer, but he doesn't see her there. And so he continues to walk in that neighborhood and comes to a jank hotel room, or a jank hotel, and it's just, he sees people coming in and out of these different rooms. And so Hosea walks up to the first room, knocks. Gomer! Nope, Gomer's not in here, go away. So he walks to another door. Knock, knock. Gomer! I'm not Gomer. He walks to the next door, knocks. Gomer! Still, no Gomer. And so he does this over and over again, hoping that he is going to find the room that his bride is in so that he can take her back. And he keeps on knocking. Nope, not in there. Gomer! Doesn't hear anything. And he gets towards the end of the hotel, and when all hope seems lost, he knocks on the door and shouts, Gomer! And he hears this sweet, small voice. Hosea? And as she opens the door, just a little bit, just to look outside, she opens the door and she makes eye contact with her husband. But then all of a sudden the door slams shut and says, you can't have her. I paid for my time with her. And so as Gomer's saying, give me my wife. I need my wife. I want my wife right now. The individual on the other side is not letting him in and saying, you need to pay for her. You need to give me the money that I'm going to lose over this. So what does Hosea do? Hosea looks through his pockets and gets all the money and all the barley and everything that he had, and he gives it to this man. He is holding it out saying, take this, I will take my bride back. And this man opens the door, takes the stuff, and chucks his wife out of the room. You see, Hosea paid for what was already his. He was already married to Gomer. They became one flesh. And even though Gomer sinned night after night, committed adultery night after night, she was still Hosea's. Hosea still loved her. And even though she was in the arms of another man, he still paid so that he could have her back. You see, that's the love that God shows His children. See, when we sin day after day, night after night, commit adultery day after day, night after night, God is banging on the door saying, Amy! Dave! Jacob! Carl! Linda! He's waiting for you to answer. Because believe it or not, God paid the price that was already His. You are already God's, and He paid the price for you. You see, Hosea was committed to the words that him and Gomer said at one point, till death do us part. And so Hosea is illustrating for us our truth for today, and that is grace is the fuel that sustains perseverance. Because Hosea had to forgive what Gomer did. God forgives when we sin against Him. When we commit adultery, when we choose selfishness over Him. He shows us grace. And grace is the fuel that sustains perseverance. Have Jane and Dave, they shared that story where Dave left for 2 weeks, and it took grace on Jane's part, and it took a submission on Dave's part. That's what had to happen here with Hosea and Gomer. There had to be forgiveness. There had to be grace. And so God communicates to His people in chapter 1, I am so mad at you. I am infuriated with how you are living your life. But then when we read in verse 3, we see the character and the depth of His love. I will come for you. I will bang on every single door. I will kick down every single barrier. I will pay the ultimate price just so I can have you back. And that's the story of Hosea and Gomer. God wants what already is His. And we read in 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 18 to 20, for you know that it was not with perishable things such as silver or gold that you were redeemed from the empty way of life, handed down to you from your ancestors, but with the precious blood of Christ, a lamb without blemish or defect. He was chosen before the creation of the world, but was revealed in the last times for your sake. You see, God bought you back with His life. Right? That annoying song that was a couple years ago, I'll catch a grenade for you. I'll step in front of a train for you. God actually did those things. Only the grenade was sin. Only the train was death. He sacrificed His blood. He sacrificed everything for us. You see, grace is the fuel that sustains perseverance, but grace is the fuel that sustains our marriages. So before you give up and before you throw in a towel, whether it is your spouse, whether it's your parents, whether it's your kids who have grown and continue to make mistakes over and over again, maybe the mistakes is your best friend has just betrayed you or turned her back on you. Before you throw in the towel, I want you to ask yourself, have I brought grace to the table? Have I brought forgiveness to the table? Have I let go of the past, or do I keep coming back to it? You see, we're told in 1 Corinthians 13 that love keeps no record of wrongs. And just like my mom reminds my dad that you do not let me see the series finale of Happy Days. And yeah, I can laugh and we can make fun of that. But for some people, they just can't let go of the mistakes somebody made in the past. I think for us, forgiveness is one of the hardest things to do. Because we can't forget. Because we don't forget. It's always in the back of our minds that this happened. That's why I think every single morning you have to wake up and you have to choose to forgive the person that you're sleeping next to. Wake up every single morning saying, I choose you. You might not like them that morning. Okay? My mom has said many times, I will love your father till the day I die, and even then. But I don't always like him. But she'll always love him. And my dad said this very same thing. And the question that I think comes up with this is, well, what if my spouse doesn't accept my forgiveness? And what if my spouse just leaves? Doesn't want to reconcile that? My response to that is, you've done all you can. God has to do the rest. But if they're not willing to submit to God, then they are being unfaithful to Him and unfaithful to you. And I might get flack for this, but Jesus says the only reason for divorce is if somebody is unfaithful. But before you go that route, have you brought grace to the table? Have you sought forgiveness? Have you shown forgiveness for that individual? So what relationships right now do you need to bring grace to the table so that your relationship can be what God had designed it to be? Where in our relationships do we need to have the drive and the commitment of Hosea, even when that individual makes mistakes in their lives? You see, what we learn from our story today is that there is no mistake too big for God to handle. As God fought for you, fight for your marriage. As God fought for you, fight